right, I think we're ready to start. Apologize for being tardy. I was talking with some folks who wanted to know what we were up to, and happy to tell them. This is the 134th meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, and I'm pleased to call it to order now so that we can begin the deliberations with respect to the Region A Category 1 casino license. I have a few opening remarks that I'd like to make to sort of set the stage for what's going to follow during the course of the week, and then we'll proceed in accordance with the plan that we've laid out. Today is Monday, September 8, 2014. I suspect everybody knows that. We've assembled to begin the final consideration of applications for a Category 1 gaming license for Region A. Two applicants are under consideration, Mohegan Sun Mass, LLC, and Wynn Mass, LLC. Each applicant has been deemed suitable as part of the Commission's background process and has submitted an extensive application describing its proposal. Those are the applications we're going to be considering today. Before we begin the process, I'd like to make a few acknowledgments and then set out the procedures that will follow over the course of the next few days. To begin, I and the other commissioners would like to acknowledge the enormous efforts that have brought us to this point. They include efforts by both of the applicants, who have dedicated substantial resources and subjected themselves to a rigorous process, including an extensive background check and submission of voluminous applications detailing their respective visions for a gaming establishment in Massachusetts. They include efforts by our staff and consultants who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to pore over countless documents and sources of information and have offered sage advice essential to ensure that the Commission is positioned to consider the applications effectively. They include efforts by elected officials and staff of the host and surrounding communities who've worked diligently to serve their constituencies in order to position their respective communities in the best place possible. And they surely include members of the public who have shared their thoughts and feelings, sometimes with a great deal of vigor, chiefly on the merits and drawbacks of the applicant's proposals, and sometimes with equal vigor on the merits and drawbacks of us. It's important that we listen, and we do. We are very grateful to all of you for the thoughts, ideas, and concerns you have brought to this process. I want to take a few minutes now to outline the process we will follow as we consider the two applications over the next several days. We'll start by asking Karen Wells, the Director of the Commission's Investigation and Enforcement Bureau, and Catherine Blue, the Commission's General Counsel, to offer an update on the suitability of the two applicants, a subject that is always open for review and will remain open for review even after we finish the proceedings this week. We'll then ask General Counsel Blue to outline briefly the basic law and considerations governing this part of the licensing process so that those general guidelines and that general framework is visible and understood by all. Next, we'll move into the evaluation process. The applications have been divided into 5 sections: building and site design, finance, mitigation, economic development, and overview. Each commissioner has looked at each application in its entirety, but in addition, each commissioner was assigned to a single section of the application to conduct a thorough analysis and provide a written and today an oral report of that analysis to the other commissioners. In light of Chairman Crosby's election to remove himself from Region A proceedings, the overview section of the application, for which he was responsible, has been divided among the other commissioners, each of whom prepared a part of the overall report, and we'll talk about that part. Today, I'll present the building and site design report, and Commissioner Zuniga will present the finance report. Tomorrow, Commissioner Cameron will present the mitigation report, Commissioner Stebbins will present the economic development report, and we will each present our assigned portions of the overview report. The written reports each of us prepared will be available on the Commission's website the morning the report is presented, and I take it that today the two reports that we're presenting today are up or shortly will be, along with the presentations themselves?
That's correct.
So they're there. Today's reports are there for anybody who would like to look at them. Those reports are there, as are our presentations. During their presentations, the commissioners may be joined by a consultant, and commissioners may from time to time ask questions of other commissioners or of the consultants. During or at the end of each presentation, the presenting commissioner may recommend conditions for the award of a gaming license to a particular applicant. At the conclusion of each day's presentations, we'll offer each applicant an opportunity to advise the Commission as to any material factual errors they believe a commissioner made during the course of his or her presentation. Commission staff has created a procedure for receiving those claims and has communicated that plan to the applicants. We'll address those claims in a public session on Wednesday morning. During the presentations, Commission staff will be compiling a list of conditions proposed by the commissioners. Commission staff may add to that list any conditions that they recommend. On Wednesday morning, the entire list will be presented to the Commission for its review, and the Commission will authorize staff to present some or all of those conditions to the applicants for their response. We're going to proceed in that fashion because we'd like to know the applicant's position with regard to the conditions before rather than after we make our final decision. The applicants will prepare written responses to the conditions and will be given a reasonable amount of time to do so. We'll solicit their thoughts as to how much time they need and then make a judgment as to the amount of time to allot. And during that time, during the time that they're considering those conditions, the Commission will be in recess. After we receive the written responses, we'll post them on our website and reconvene our meeting. Upon reconvening, we'll consider the responses and may ask an applicant, consultant, or staff member to answer any questions we have about the responses. At that point, the Commission will begin its deliberations, and those deliberations will continue until we reach a decision. When we do, we'll take a final vote and incorporate any conditions of licensure into that final vote. As in the past, any license award will be reduced to writing and signed by the Commission and the applicant before our meeting concludes. One final note, and then we'll turn to Director Wells and Council Blue. There will be no press availability while the report presentations are in progress, but there will be one on Wednesday after those presentations are concluded and the Commission recesses to allow the applicants to begin considering any conditions. Once the proceedings resume and the Commission begins its deliberations, there again will be no press availability until we conclude. During those blackout periods, please feel free to channel questions to our acting public information officer, Hank Shaffron, who will be happy to give you his contact information if you do not already have it. Hank, where are you? Right over there. So Hank will be happy to take questions and provide you with his contact information if he doesn't have it. So that concludes the opening remarks that I had. Does any other commissioner have anything that you want to say before we begin? All right, then let's, I'm sorry. Actually, yes, this is probably a little customary, but I think it bears restating. You did mention the efforts that everybody present and elsewhere have put to get us to this day. I will emphasize something that I've done before, which is the efforts of the applicants. You will see that in my presentation later today that there is a lot of money that has come and therefore a lot of hours and man hours or person hours that has come in terms of putting these presentations, these proposals, together. It's true for the presentations, but the applicants are really, have really done a lot of work to get us to this point. And from my perspective, the Commonwealth benefits from that competition and from that effort. So thank you for that. Well said. All right, let's then begin. Director Wells.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here this morning as you begin the process to award the Region A license. As we start the process, I think it's helpful for the public to be aware of the Gaming Commission's scope of responsibility. The Massachusetts Gaming Commission exercises all the authority granted by the legislature to protect the integrity of expanded gaming in Massachusetts. The Commission is mandated by law to develop and implement the highest quality licensing process and strict regulatory oversight of all gaming establishments and their ongoing operations. As dictated by the statute, the Commission is responsible for evaluating the financial stability and integrity of gaming licensees, as well as their sources of financing, their employees, and vendors with whom they have frequent transactions. To help fulfill these responsibilities, the Investigations and Enforcement Bureau maintains a cooperative working relationship with all federal, state, and local law enforcement organizations and regulatory agencies that have authority and jurisdiction in areas germane to our mission. If and when matters are brought to our attention or come to our attention through our own investigations that could have an impact on our efforts to effectively license and regulate the gaming industry, these matters will be considered by the Commission in a public meeting for further discussion, deliberation, and if necessary, referral to the appropriate law enforcement or regulatory agencies. We make these referrals because our primary responsibilities focus on regulation of individuals and entities that are involved in the ongoing business operation of gaming establishments, not on municipalities, public officials, or others whose relationships do not affect those ongoing operations. On a personal note, I am very grateful for these ongoing cooperative relationships, which I believe further the public interest. I am also very proud of our investigative team at the IEB, which also includes our consultants from Michael and Carol. I realize that I've expressed my gratitude for their efforts at numerous public hearings, but I would like to reiterate that today and note just how much I not only appreciate their efforts, but also the focus on integrity that was the cornerstone of all our investigations. I can assure you that that focus on integrity will continue as we move forward. As a preliminary matter, I believe Council Blue has some updates for the Commission from the legal department, so I'll defer right to her at this point.
All right, General Counsel Blue.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'd like to provide an update on the matter pertaining to the land on which Wynn proposes to locate a gaming establishment. On December 13th, 2013, the Commission met for the purpose of exploring certain issues surrounding the land transaction between Wynn Mass LLC and FBT Everett Realty LLC for the sale and purchase of real property located in the city of Everett. The real property involved is the location of the proposed Wynn gaming establishment. At that meeting, the Commission heard from Commission staff, in particular the IEB, representatives of the applicant, and a representative of Colliers International, who was engaged to do an appraisal of the property. After considering the information brought forward, the Commission voted to approve the solution proposed by the applicant, which was to lower the purchase price of the property to no more than $35 million, with a $10 million proviso for the cleanup cost, to require that the 3 members of FBT Everett Realty LLC sign a notarized document saying they are the exclusive recipients of the proceeds of the sale, and that the IEB deliver its file on this matter to the appropriate federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. The Commission, in its discussion, noted that an investor in the property could receive its investment back. At the December 13th, 2013 meeting, Wynn provided the Commission with an amendment to the option purchase agreement for the property, showing that the purchase price was lowered from $75 million to $35 million. The appraisal from Colliers supported the revised purchase price. On December 23, 2013, the Commission received certificates from Paul Lonis and Dustin D'Annunzio, stating that except for fees due to Trip McCoy and James Russo, there was no agreement to make any payments to any other person or entity from the proceeds of the sale of the property. On June 14, 2014, the Commission received a certificate from Anthony Gattineri, stating that he has not granted to any person or entity an option, warrant, or other right to his interest in FBT Everett Realty or the economic interests represented thereby. The Commission further received evidence that on June 12, 2014, Mr. Gattineri paid in full a note in the approximate amount of around $1.9 million given by Mr. Gattineri to Mr. Lightbody for the purchase of Mr. Lightbody's interest in FBT Realty. I have reviewed the amendment to the option purchase agreement between Wynn and FBT Everett Realty and the documents received from Mr. Lonis, Mr. D'Annunzio, and Mr. Gattineri. Those documents satisfy the conditions required in the Commission's vote on December 13th, 2013. I have also conferred with the IEB, and I am advised that the IEB has forwarded its files on the matter to the appropriate law enforcement agencies. Should any questions arise out of the matter, they will be referred to the appropriate law enforcement for review. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, that's comprehensive. Thank you, General Counsel Blue. Any questions for her about that? All right, thank you very much. Director Wells.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm a little taller than Catherine. As we have repeatedly stated, suitability of applicants and eventual licensees is ongoing. As such, the IEB has an ongoing duty to ensure that the licensees are continuing to demonstrate their qualification for licensure. As we have done with other applicants for the Category 1 and Category 2 licenses, the IEB has continued to monitor any relevant issues for the Commission, and I'll give an update for you here this morning. I'm going to start with WinMass LLC. On December 16, 2013, the Commission held an adjudicatory hearing on the suitability determination for WinMass LLC for Phase 1 of the evaluation process. The applicant was ultimately deemed suitable by the Commission. As with our other prospective licensees, since that time, the IEB has maintained contact with WIN on regulatory matters and has continued to monitor issues which may be relevant to ongoing suitability. As General Counsel Blue mentioned, during the course of the suitability investigation, IEB identified concerns surrounding the sellers of the property for the Everett project. These concerns were communicated to the applicant, who then renegotiated the purchase price of the property to fair market value so that the owners, whether identified or hidden, would not benefit from the casino legislation and taint the implementation of the act. The Commission has accepted the resolution by WIN. At the time of the suitability report, the IEB had no evidence that executives at WIN had any knowledge of the concerning conduct of the sellers and no evidence that they were complicit in any of the activities brought to light during the investigation. As of this date, no additional information has been revealed that implicates WIN in the concerns regarding the sellers. IEB investigators followed up regarding the certificates that General Counsel Blue referenced, which were submitted by the sellers to comply with the Commission's mandate. As part of the process, the IEB subpoenaed additional documents and conducted additional interviews. The certificates identified 2 individuals as receiving consulting fees as part of the proposed transaction, Trip McCoy and James Russo. As has been publicly reported, Russo is a business associate of Charles Lightbody. McCoy had previously been identified to investigators, and during the follow-up investigation, he provided his contract for consulting services to the IEB. Russo had not been previously identified. He declined to speak with investigators. However, Paul Lonas and Dustin D'Annunzio described his role in the transaction as being that of a consultant/lobbyist who is going to receive a 3% fee. D'Annunzio and Lonas told investigators there was no written contract with Russo and could not definitively explain whether he was to receive 3% of the profit or of the gross. D'Annunzio stated that if the parties ended up with a difference of understanding, they would have to sit down and talk about the exact payment. The specific details of the follow-up investigation were forwarded to the appropriate law enforcement agencies, as was done with the rest of the investigative materials, pursuant to the Commission's directive for such use, if any, they so choose. The Commission has cooperated and will continue to cooperate with those law enforcement agencies going forward. The IEB has uncovered no additional information, nor has it received any information from any law enforcement agency to indicate that WIN had knowledge of or was participating in any efforts to conceal information from the Commission. Counsel for WIN has assured the IEB that the sellers of the property will not have any ongoing involvement in the casino once the transaction is completed. Most assuredly, the IEB will remain vigilant regarding this restriction. The Commission also has the power to enforce that prohibition by way of a condition of licensing or by the separate licensing process for vendors and employees. As the Commission is aware, there was a significant amount of time at the applicant's hearing spent discussing operations in Macau. The IEB continues to monitor relevant issues, and the applicant has been responsive in providing information. Wynn Macau continues to maintain its oversight of the junket operations in a manner consistent with what was described at the suitability hearing. As described in the IEB's December 2013 report, Wynn's practice is to refer unsubstantiated or unverifiable derogatory information about junket operators, as well as unconfirmed intelligence reports, to the DICJ, NGCB, and other appropriate agencies. We have reviewed the filings Wynn has made to the NGCB in the period from December 2013 to the present, and those filings comport with Wynn's stated practice. Wynn Macau has added no new junket operators since the suitability hearing. One junket relationship has been terminated. Additionally, we were informed by Wynn that upon a lower court in Macau banning one of the junket shareholders from entering a casino, DICJ requested that the junket remove that shareholder from the license until his legal matters were resolved. Wynn Macau banned him from the casino and revoked his junket identification card. Wynn continues to cooperate with the IEB, and such cooperation will continue to be required to the maximum extent possible. There are presently 8 new casinos under construction in Macau, including Wynn Palace on the Cotai Strip. As of June 30th, 2014, the company incurred approximately $1.1 billion of the approximately $4 billion in total project costs. The company expects to open its resort on Cotai in the first half of 2016. Their timeline and costs are consistent with their earlier expectations, which were communicated during the initial investigation. Macau's Commission Against Corruption, the CCAC, has requested certain information related to its land for the Wynn Palace. Wynn Macau was cooperating with the CCAC's request. Of note, during the suitability investigation, investigators did look at this issue and found no impropriety on the part of Wynn. The minutes of the Wynn Resorts Board meeting of April 20th, 2012 include an accounting of Kim Sinatra J. Shaw and Deborah Wong Yang from an outside law firm explaining to the board the various actions taken to attempt to ensure the land transaction was done in accordance with proper compliance policies, including the FCPA. The IEB will certainly monitor if any information is available on this issue. An individual named Paul Fua was recently arrested at the Wynn Macau on June 19th for operating a sports betting regarding World Cup soccer operation after Wynn alerted authorities to his presence there. Subsequent to his arrest in Macau, he then traveled to Las Vegas, where he was arrested with some associates on July 13th for allegedly operating an illegal sports betting operation. A large amount of cash was seized. Our latest information that he has remained in Las Vegas on some sort of monitoring and that the federal case is proceeding. Notable regarding the market in Macau is the expansion of the number of gaming establishments and the easing of gaming regulations in South Korea and the potential for casino gaming in Japan. We will continue to monitor this situation and report as necessary. Due in large part to Macau, Wynn's financial condition remains strong. Wynn Macau's net revenues of $4,040,526,000, gross revenues reduced by promotional advances, represented 72% of Wynn Resorts' total new revenues in 2013. Wynn Macau's adjusted property EBITDA of $1,324,119,000 represented approximately 73% of Wynn Resorts' total adjusted property EBITDA in 2013. Wynn's Las Vegas properties continue to operate with a high degree of comparative success and EBITDA margin as measured by other competing Las Vegas properties and remain stable in their operations compliance. Regarding the financial picture in Macau, the revenues continue to be strong. As has been reported starting in June, there has, however, been a 3-month decline in gaming revenues in Macau overall, with a 6.1% decline in August. Analysts say that the fundamentals of Macau's gaming are sound in medium to long term. Again, this is something we will continue to monitor and report as necessary. Since the suitability hearing, there have been no regulatory fines, nor have there been any official pending complaints pertaining to any of the qualifying entities or individuals associated with the Wynn Mass LLC application. Wynn has recently created a Global Compliance Office for Wynn Resorts Limited. The appointed Global Compliance Officer, Kevin Torek, will be expanding the office to include a Director of Investigations and a Director of Policy. Wynn also provided the IEB with a newly adopted compliance plan requiring background checks for vendors and development deals, as well as a new policy for foreign official gift and hosting. Additionally, Wynn is updating their Title 31 compliance policies, and the project is expected to be completed shortly. Investigators have found no additional information at this time which would necessitate a recommendation that the positive suitability status of the applicant be changed. As with both applicants, any concerns by the Commission which were discussed as part of their original suitability or as part of this update or as part of the Phase 2 analysis may be considered in terms of relative suitability or as part of licensing conditions before making an award. I'm happy to answer any questions by the Commission at this time, if you have any. Otherwise, I'll proceed with my update from Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts.
Director, it seems like you're comfortable with the work that's been done, the follow-up work, and there are no issues we should be concerned about. Is that correct?
That is correct. As to the applicant, Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts LLC, on October 3rd, 2013, I came before you for the public hearing on the suitability determination for Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, the Phase 1 of the evaluation process. The applicant was deemed suitable at that time. As you are aware, there are certainly some changes to the project since that evaluation. Originally, the project was planned for a location in Palmer, Massachusetts, but after the referendum on the host community agreement failed to pass, the project was moved to its present proposed site in Revere, Massachusetts. The proposed ultimate ownership structure remains the same, involving a partnership between Mohegan Tribal Gaming Authority and Brigade Capital Management. However, the details of the proposed project differ due to the different plans, costs, and business relationships. Sterling Suffolk Racecourse, SSR, which was once an applicant itself for a casino license, will be the landlord for the new project if the applicant is granted a license. Additionally, New England Development and Fennard Properties are contributing what the applicant describes as key money towards the project and will be involved in the retail portion of the project amenities. While Fennard was expected to be involved in the Palmer project and was referenced in the suitability report, New England Properties is new for the Revere project. There will be a fuller description and analysis of all these arrangements in the Phase 2 presentations at these hearings this week. A notable difference since the original suitability report is the increase in costs for the development of the new plan in Revere. While the Palmer project was estimated to cost approximately $775 million, the Revere project is estimated to cost over $1.1 billion. Originally, the Revere project had different financial obligations for host and surrounding community agreements. There have also been some market changes relative to MSM application, including the granting of a Massachusetts license to MGM in Springfield, the expansion of casino gaming in New York, and as I will elaborate on shortly, declining revenues in the Connecticut market. The Phase 1 analysis as to suitability focused on the integrity, good character, honesty, and reputation of the applicant and its qualifiers, the applicant's business ability and experience, as well as the applicant's ability to obtain suitable financial sources to complete the project. In Phase 2, which you will hear about this week, there is further financial analysis conducted on revenue projections, market analysis, debt payment, and a potential impact of the debt-to-equity ratio. Phase 2 allows for a comparative analysis not only on finance, but the other enumerated categories as well. As the Commission has noted repeatedly throughout all of the licensing process, suitability is not only ongoing, but the relative suitability of applicants in any investigative categories can be considered by the Commission in making an ultimate licensing decision. Additionally, the Commission has the ability to look at the analysis and determine any appropriate conditions you may deem necessary. The applicant and qualifiers for MSM remain in good standing in the other jurisdictions in which they are currently licensed. There are updates from certain jurisdictions as to applicant qualifiers. New Jersey, the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement concluded their investigation into an MSM affiliate in March and issued a report and order licensing MGA Gaming New Jersey for 5 years and deeming all members of the MTGA Audit Committee, the chairman, and all other managers of Mohegan Gaming Advisors, LLC, the same officers and managers as Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts currently, as suitable. In Pennsylvania, qualifier chairman Kevin Brown was issued a principal license in Pennsylvania and Florida and has been deemed suitable in New Jersey. In June of 2014, Kevin Brown, Michael Edis, and Tom Spurk, Mario Contomarcos, and David Rome were issued slot machine business employee licenses by the Florida Division of Parimutuel Wagering. Only David Rome renewed his into 2015, of fiscal year 2015. The Cowlitz Tribe Casino Project in La Center, Washington, which is planned to be managed by an affiliate of the MTGA, is still the subject of an ongoing litigation, and the land has not yet been taken into trust by the United States. Since the suitability investigation, the qualifier MGTA received 2 minor regulatory fines for service to intoxicated persons. Another notable development since the suitability hearing is that on June 20th, 2014, Mohegan Gaming New York, LLC, an indirect and wholly owned subsidiary of MTGA, submitted an application to manage a resort casino facility in Thompson, New York. The suitability investigation is currently pending. The license award is expected to occur sometime in the fall. Since the suitability report, Mohegan Sun instituted the following policies and procedures: an alcohol safety brochure and server training updates, as well as a whistleblower hotline expansion. Brigade continues to update compliance and audit procedures. Not unlike other gaming companies in the Northeast, Mohegan Sun has experienced declining revenues. For example, their quarterly financial numbers at the end of July showed a 5.2% decline in revenue to $326 million and a 19% drop in adjusted net earnings to $69 million. On August 28, 2014, Moody's Investor Service changed Mohegan Tribal Gaming Authority's rating outlook to negative from stable, citing in part continuing decline in revenues. Obviously, the financial strength of the application does not rest entirely on Mohegan Sun, as they have a partnership with Brigade, and their proposed financial structure is outlined in the RFA2 application. As part of their RFA2 application, MSM provided highly confident letters from Goldman Sachs and Bank of America Merrill Lynch for the remainder of the financing. Details on what that means for the project and the expected terms will be detailed later in the financing presentation. Subsequent to the suitability hearing, the applicant was sued by the landowner in Palmer for an alleged breach of an exclusivity agreement. This allegation is based on the applicant's ultimate business agreement with SSR and the Revere project. While the IEB does not have any evidence of any contact between the applicant and SSR prior to the referendum, an assertion the applicant denies, or a deliberate effort to lose the vote, for which the applicant has provided evidence to the contrary, we have confirmed some discussion between the parties after the referendum, but prior to the official termination of the agreement. This matter is currently in litigation. A preliminary review indicates this contact after the referendum may ultimately be determined to be a technical violation of the contract. However, no definitive opinion can be expressed on this matter prior to the rigors of the discovery and litigation process. Assuming arguendo that there was in fact a breach of the agreement, the legal issue then becomes one of damages. Since there was no provision for liquidated damages in the contract, the matter would need to be settled by the court as well. Ultimately, should a breach of the agreement have taken place, the question becomes, does the concept of violating the contract under the circumstances of the referendum loss rise to the level of impacting suitability? While there is insufficient cause to disqualify at this point, Commission has the ability to consider it in terms of relative suitability if it so chooses. It certainly is notable for purposes of the analysis that the preliminary contact between the parties that has been verified was a matter of days before the official termination of the contract and after the referendum vote, which in effect frustrated the purpose of the contract in the first place. In all, the project has significantly changed, and certainly the detailed analysis in the Phase 2 applications will be, which will be presented before you, will be helpful in asserting the strength of the proposal. Nothing has been discovered at this point which would change the original determination of suitability for the application. As I stated before the WIN update, any concerns by the Commission were discussed as part of the original suitability or as part of this update or as part of Phase 2 analysis may be considered in terms of relative suitability or as part of a potential license condition before making the award. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions?
So there was no penalty stipulated in that contract. You called it liquidated damages,
Correct.
but there's no penalty, financial or otherwise.
Correct.
Thank you.
And again, you're comfortable with the investigation that took place between the original suitability and now, and you're not bringing forth any concerns. Well, you brought forth some concerns, but nothing that would affect the suitability.
That is correct.
All right, that too was comprehensive. Thank you very much for both of those
Thank you.
comprehensive reports.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll begin the phase of our proceedings in which each of the commissioners is going to present a report. As I said earlier, I'll present the first one, and I'll be followed by Commissioner Zuniga, and those will be the reports that we have for today. So let me change positions. You're going to drive, Melissa, is that right? Good, thank you. So I'm going to present the Building and Site Design Report. I do this with my back to the audience because the real audience is the other commissioners. It's important to understand that this is the first opportunity that the commissioners have had to discuss together the reports that we individually have compiled. And it is an opportunity, therefore, that for us, and that's why the commissioners are the primary audience. My focus is on building and site design, which consists of a number of parts shown on the next slide. The overall application has been broken into 5 separate categories: the overview, finance, economic development, building and site design, and mitigation categories. And the building and site design category focuses chiefly on the physical aspects of the proposed casino and its relationship to its surroundings. The site design category consists of 79 questions. Overall, the applicants were required to answer about a little over 200 questions, 79 of which were in this building and site design category. And there were 7 sections of that component of the application. Creativity and design and overall concept excellence was the first. Gaming establishments of high caliber with quality amenities was the second. Compatibility with surroundings was the third. Use of sustainability development principles was the fourth. Security, approach to permitting, and other uses for the facility and its precise location in the community rounded out that section of the application. I was assisted in my analysis of the building and site design component of the application by a number of thoughtful consultants who are sitting behind me today. Stan Elkerton, Ray Porfilio, Frank Tremontazzi, Rick Moore, Jason Sobel, and They provided information that was helpful throughout the proceedings. Anne-Marie Lubino was also one of the consultants. She unfortunately could not be here today. In addition to them, Nancy Stack and Melissa Martinez. Melissa's driving the program. Nancy Stack is there, and Margaret Miner Wood from Pink & Co. All three of whom were from Pink & Company, provided invaluable assistance. The way we all went about these ratings and analysis was common to all sections, and you'll see this, we'll all see this throughout. We took the reports, we took the applications, we looked at each of the questions, we rated each of the questions, we grouped the questions into groups, and then we said that the rating for each group of questions was insufficient because the response failed to present a plan to address the topic or failed to meet the minimum acceptable criteria of the Commission, or it was sufficient. It provided a comprehensible analysis, met the minimum requirements, and provided the required or requested information. It was very good in that it was comprehensive, demonstrated credible experience and plans, and or excelled in some areas, or was outstanding because it was of uniformly high quality and demonstrated convincing experience, creative thinking, innovative plans, and a substantially unique approach. So we grouped each of these questions into groups, gave them a rating, and that rating in turn led to an overall rating that we'll see develop as this presentation and the others proceed. It's important, though, as we look at these, to understand and remember that this is not a scoring system. There is no numerical value attached to any of these ratings. And the ratings themselves do not necessarily have the same weight. The categories, I should say, do not necessarily have the same weight. So we'll have an opportunity to discuss when our actual deliberations begin, and we'll probably do so as the first order of business, the relative weight assigned to the various categories in the application. It's important to understand that. We do. It's important for the audience to understand it as well. My report, in addition to containing these ratings in various groups of questions, contains 6 appendices. An appendix dealing with a basis for evaluation of the architectural design and quality, and then an appendix dealing with design review, a thoughtful and thorough review of the design of both facilities, a traffic and parking review, an energy and sustainable design review, a permitting, design, and construction schedule review, and then excerpts from the relevant statutes so that those key elements are in front of us. Those appendices, which are part of the report, are prepared and were prepared by the consultants. They're not necessarily part of my report. In fact, they're not part of my report. They're a basis for my judgment, along with the discussions that we had during the course of our various meetings over the past year. But they're there so that you all can have the benefit of the same advice that I got and an application of thoughtful principles to the topics each section of the application contained. In addition to the consultants and in addition to the applications themselves, the information on which I based the ratings included responses to our requests for clarifications. We asked the applicants after the applications were filed to respond to a number of questions to clarify various portions of what they had said. Public comment that we got through responses and letters, emails to the Commission, and very importantly, public comment that we got at the open meetings that we held to discuss the applications. Reports by public bodies such as the Metropolitan Planning Commission, information filed with the Secretary of Environmental Affairs as part of the procedures under the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act requirements that each applicant has gone through, rigorous requirements that provided a great deal of information about the project. And in addition to, next slide please, site visits that we took to both of the applicants' principal facilities. We visited the Wynn facility in Las Vegas. That's the facility there. This is the golf course in back of the facility. Those are the buildings primary buildings of the Wynn and the Wynn Encore. We looked at those. We visited the Mohegan Sun facility in Uncasville, Connecticut. That's the site there alongside the Thames River. This is the facility itself that is located in this area right here. We were able to tour both facilities. All four of us did that and gained a great deal of information, not only about the facility, but about the various components, personnel, and other factors that bear on our decision-making process. Before I turn to the specific location, let's just take a big picture view of the region. This, I think, is familiar to most people, but it's worthwhile to be familiar to all of us. This is the Springfield MGM site of the casino that we have designated as the licensee for that region. This is the area where the two Connecticut casinos exist, the Mohegan Sun Casino in Uncasville right there. These are the two Rhode Island casinos, Twin River and the Newport Casino. This is a area for a proposed tribal casino in Taunton. This is our licensee in Plainville, the Plain Ridge facility that is now under construction. This is a proposal that's not really become clarified for a facility on Martha's Vineyard. And this, of course, is Region A, the two proposals that we're talking about and will be talking about over the next couple of days. A close-up is on the next slide of the region in which these facilities are located. This is the Mohegan Sun facility in Revere. This is the Wynn facility in Everett. They're about equidistant from downtown Boston, which is here. Other prominent landmarks are the Tobin Bridge, of course, the Logan Airport, the Orient Heights section of East Boston is here, and we'll look more closely at the various jurisdictions that are in that area. Overall, both of these facilities are planned for a dense urban environment that is subject to rapid change and a deeply dense urban environment, as I've said, and that's a consideration that I know all of us have taken into account. So with that as background, let's take a look at the first of the criteria, which is creativity in design and overall concept excellence. There are 9 questions in this area. 5 of the most important are these: the overall theme, the relationship with surroundings, color renderings, schematic design, and proposed landscaping. Parking I'm going to deal with later on, and it also deals is dealt with by the mitigation section, and the transportation infrastructure I'm likewise going to take a look at later on. I want to concentrate on these 4, those 5 during this part of the presentation. There's some overlap, and this will be true as we proceed in all of the categories, between this building and site design, the mitigation, in some cases economic development and finance, but mostly the overlap is between this section, where there is overlap, this section and the mitigation section. So as I said, I'm going to be concentrating on these, and Appendix A and B to our report deals with those 4 considerations as well. So let's turn first to the Mohegan Sun, and I do this in alphabetical order. I'm going to be doing this throughout in alphabetical order. And this is a rendering of the facility. This is Tomasello Avenue. This is Winthrop Avenue. We're at the corner of Tomasello and Winthrop. I'm going to use this as the transition slide as I go each time to Mohegan Sun. The detail on there I'll deal with in more substance later. Next slide, please. To set the stage, this is the area where the facility is proposed. This is the footprint of the facility next to the Suffolk Downs racetrack. East Boston and Orient Heights is right here, the Orient Heights section. It used to be Hog Island, which was one of the 5 islands comprising East Boston historically before its annexment in 1836, I think. But this was all islands, and Hog Island was one of those islands. Bell Island Marsh is right here. That's a a wildlife preservation area. Winthrop is down here. The Winthrop area has basically 2 exits and entrances, one along Boardman Street, which we'll take a look at here, and another up north and around. The Chelsea River is here that has active shipping. You'll see the tank farms here, a number of supplies of fuel oil and other commodities are there. And of course, Logan Airport is down here. The main arteries are Route 1A, Route 16, Route 145, and Route 1A on this side. Route 1A here to the north goes up, ultimately joining Route 1 farther north. Route 1A southbound splits down here. Part of it joins Route 90 and the Ted Williams Tunnel into Boston. The other part splits, continues as 1A through the Sumner Tunnel into Boston as well. Revere itself, shown on the next slide, comprises this area, so that the facility is at the southeast corner of the city. Wetlands comprise about 40%, mostly in the north end. Revere Beach Boulevard, historical facility here, runs the entire length and ends just north of the facility right there. And it is in the National Register of Historic Places. I should say Revere Beach is in the National Register of Historic Places. This was once a thriving entertainment and vacation and beach area. It still is for all of the citizens of the region. A little bit closer look at the site is in the next slide. And it is here. This again is the footprint, the same footprint. This is the Chelsea Creek. This is the oil storage tanks. This is Winthrop Avenue up here, and Winthrop Avenue and Tomasello Drive provide one method of access. Another method of access is along Furlong Drive to here. We'll touch on that in a second. And a third access, discouraged, but nonetheless existing, is along here and up Tomasello Drive. Right now, this area is occupied by the stalls for the horses that race at Suffolk Downs Racetrack, which is here. Those, as part of the plan, will be moved to another location, and I don't believe a permanent location has yet been determined. So that's the footprint, that's the setting. Now let's take a look at the proposed facility itself. And this is at a very high level, as you can tell, but it does help understand the overall components of the project, the program elements, they're called. And they are most prominently several. First, here's Winthrop Avenue and Tomasello Drive entrance to the facility. Furlong Drive comes out this way. But the building itself consists of a flexible space that's right here on the end. If this pointer will work, right there on the end. This is a so-called boutique hotel that will be operated by a third party. I'll come back to that in a second, and we'll hear more about that in the next couple of days. The primary entrance will be right here into the so-called porte cochere that's right in this area here. The casino hotel is right here. The gaming area is right here. This area is for retail and food and beverage. And this area will be the entrance to the casino from the corner of Washburn and Winthrop, right next to the MBTA Blue Line stop, which is right there. Those are the primary elements. There will be a parking down in this area, parking in the garages right here, and we'll look at each of those components in a little bit more detail as we proceed. This slide demonstrates the site plan. It's essentially the same, contains a lot of the same information that we just discussed, but it gives us a different and I think better overall perspective. This again is the entrance to the facility from Winthrop Avenue and Tomasello Drive, right down through this way. This is the entrance through Furlong Drive, starts out here. These are existing businesses. That's a Super Stop and Shop and a Target, or maybe it's the other way around. Those are existing businesses, and these are parking lot. This is a parking lot for those businesses. So the visitor comes in and comes around here to this area, and then has basically two choices. One's to come around here and go up on a ramp that we'll look at in a minute, and enter the casino up here, or come around and come to the side and go down here into the parking area. This is the casino hotel. This is the third-party so-called boutique hotel. There is the T-stop at Beachmont on the Blue Line, and this is the entrance to the casino from that next to Washburn Avenue, which is right there. Two of the other notable factors here are Sales Creek, which is here and leads out to Bell Island Marsh on this side. We looked at Bell Island Marsh a minute ago. But Sales Creek continues, runs under the track there, and runs across up into this area. We'll take a look at the plan for how to deal with Sales Creek under that ramp, and see that it is in fact a ramp. And finally, the other thing on this plan that's worthy of note, because we'll talk about it in a second, is the way that the plantings and other components, there are berms along here, pull this entire facility back from the surrounding area. This is a residential area along here. This is plantings and a berm that pull the facility back away from Washburn Avenue. And the same is true up here in both of those areas. So the facility does not come right onto the street, and the setbacks are helpful in lowering the mass of its design and its impact on the immediate neighborhood. So those are the outlines of the facility. Some renderings were prepared to show what the concept is like. And it's important to remember that these are not plans, they're not construction drawings. These are concepts of what the facility will look like, and they've been prepared both by both applicants and are customary parts of this presentation. So this is a view from Revere Beach. We're actually in the water here, hopefully in a boat. Looking back toward the facility, downtown Boston is here, the casino hotel is here, the boutique hotel is here, and you begin to notice a prominent feature of the proposal that's going to appear in each of the slides we take a look at, and that is these round parasol-like structures that are part of an essential part and a prominent part of the design. The theory there is that they are evocative of the parasols that were a part of the beach-going experience. They've been incorporated in highly stylized fashion into the design and are part of every view of the facility that you get, regardless of where you're standing. The next slide, please. Now, this is the one with which we started. Again, you can see now how these parasols stand out in bold relief when you're looking from the corner of Tomasello Avenue and Winthrop Street. These are those parasols. This is the back of the facility. The entrance is down here. That is the casino hotel there. This is the boutique hotel. And this is some of the plantings that I was talking about a minute ago that pull this back somewhat from the immediate roadway and create some space that reduces the overall mass and encroachment on the neighborhood. In the next slide, we're going to move down toward, we were standing up there, we've now moved down to the other end of Winthrop Avenue. Washburn is right here. And this is the so-called Beachmont entrance. So-called because the Beachmont T-stop on the Blue Line is right here across Washburn. You come out of the T, enter the casino right here, and then you go up this stairway to a casino that's here with the parasol on top of it. This is the so-called Moon Casino. It's a small casino that is of immediate availability to visitors who take the T. Here is the boutique hotel. That's where we were standing a minute ago. And this is the casino hotel back here. In addition, on this slide, worthy of note, are an MBTA bus stop there. You can just see, maybe you can see, the MBTA bus, and there's another bus stop along here as well. This is the actual entrance to the facility at the Porte Cochere. Again, these parasol structures are a prominent feature of the entrance. Now you've come off, you've driven up that ramp area that we'll talk about some more, but we've already taken a look at. And the entrance to the casino and the hotel, actually the entrance to the hotel is the immediate area here, and this is where that entrance is. These parasols are going to be constructed from a material called glass fiber reinforced concrete. It is a effective material, but it takes some considerable care in its installation and maintenance in order to ensure that it creates the desired effect. I want to say that because I'm going to come back to that at the end of the presentation. The next slide, please. Now, the next several slides are going to be elevations that just help us look at the overall design from a variety of perspectives. Again, these are concepts. These are not plans, and they're highly stylized because they take away a lot of the surrounding area. But they do give us a feel for what the facility looks like from various perspectives. This is from Washburn Avenue on the east, looking west at the facility. And of course, if we were standing on Washburn Avenue, the facility would be right on, much closer to us. So this is simply viewed as looking from east to west. Here is the casino hotel. Here is the boutique hotel. Now we're on the other side in this elevation down here. The casino hotel is here, the boutique here, but we're looking from Tomasello Drive west, exactly the opposite area, opposite perspective. These little things here are of no particular consequence now, except that they illustrate and are part of plans showing the materials that will be used to construct the various portions of the facility. They're also present in drawings submitted by Wynn and give us an idea of what those portions are going to look like. Now we've shifted to the north. We're at the north end of the facility. We're looking south. Again, the casino hotel, the boutique hotel is over here. You can see, again, the prominence that the parasols play in the view from this area and the view really from any area, because when we go down here to the south elevation looking north, we're standing now in the middle of the racetrack looking north. This is the, again, for purposes of orientation, casino hotel, boutique hotel. This is a glass wall that was incorporated as part of the original plans. There have been successive plans. It's not clear that this still remains, but it was designed to give people in the casino, which is this space right here, a view of what was going on in the track. You'll see in a few minutes that now that's an entertainment center, so it's not clear that that will still remain. But in any event, that's the overall picture that one gets from looking at this facility from the south. So that's the initial view of the overall concept and design of the Mohegan Sun facility in Revere. And I'm going to shift now to take a look with equal detail at the Wynn facility in Everett. This is the thematic slide that I'll use to deal with the introduction to each of the Wynn sections. This is the proposed tower. Geographically, and we'll look at that in a second, Somerville is back to this area. Charlestown is back to this area. The Mystic River runs along here, and this is a little cut into the, off of the Mystic River, where this is to be located. Rutherford Avenue, Route 99, Broadway runs up by the side of the building on that side. The next slide I want to spend a second talking about because it reinforces the notion that this facility, as well as the other facility, but particularly this facility, is a plan for a highly dense urban area comprising multiple jurisdictions. And that adds to considerations that are typical, I suspect, of a dense urban area, which this surely is. So we have Everett is this area right here. Medford is in this area right here. Across the river up in this area is Somerville. Cambridge is in this area, that's Harvard Square right there. Charlestown is this area right here. Downtown Boston is here. Charlestown, of course, is a section of Boston, so this is Boston. East Boston is right here. Chelsea is this area right here, and then Revere is up to this area. So there are several jurisdictions that comprise this area. 7, I think, 7 different cities, 8 different cities. I should mention that Malden is up in here. Medford continues up in this direction. And all of those jurisdictions intersect at one point or another. The immediate vicinity is heavily industrialized. This is the LNG landing facility. The LNG storage tanks are up in here. This is a large scrap yard, probably the largest in New England, where scrap material is processed and put on ships for destinations elsewhere. This is a large power plant that supplies power to Boston. And the site itself, we'll take a closer look at it, as I say, is right there. In addition to the industrialization, though, there are some green spaces here. This is the Mystic River Reservation up in here. It continues. There is more green space allocated along here, and a riverway walk is proposed and has been under plans for some period of time to connect the river all along here. In some, it's an area where thought has been given to improvement in the future of the overall area, but as now, as I say, it's heavily industrialized, as is this section of the river on the Charlestown side. This is mostly industrial here. This is a landing area for cars in through here, automobiles brought in from other places, and stored there for delivery throughout New England. 2 other features are Sullivan Square, which is right here. We're going to be hearing a lot about that over the next few days. Sullivan Square is here, and Assembly Square, which is Somerville's new development area. It used to be a GM, I believe, automobile assembly area. Fell into disuse when the automobile industry left, and is now being repurposed as a multi-use area full of restaurants, shops, theaters, and is the new home of the partners' healthcare offices. Plans were just announced recently for that. So that's the immediate vicinity. This is a closer look of the site itself. It sits, this is the area off of the Mystic River that we were looking at. This is the actual site. It is now an open, dusty, overgrown site, contaminated. Used to be the site of a Monsanto chemical processing factory. We heard discussion at many of our public meetings about the people now older, but who used to, as children, play down here in the water they described as yellow and full of chemicals. It's not that bad now, but it still is a polluted former industrial site, badly in need of cleanup before anything can be done with it. This is the adjacent area. There's a railroad that goes right through here on a bridge. That's the commuter rail that goes to the north. And there is an MBTA maintenance facility right here. The power plant that I mentioned a minute ago is right here. There is a 365-foot tall MWRA, Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, windmill right here. This area across from the site is mixed commercial and residential, a mixed commercial and residential area. And all of this is part of the Lower Broadway Urban Renewal Plan that the city of Everett has created. And in fact, some new multi-family housing is now being constructed up in this area. Over here, and you can't get there easily from here to there, you have to go up and around and come through another intersection and come back down, is the Gateway Mall. That's obviously a Target. This is a Costco. That is a Home Depot. And there are other chain stores here, and the rest of the area is restaurants and other facilities there. So that's the site. That's where this facility is proposed. The next slide, we'll take a look at what the proposal is in a broad form. This is the site plan, and this is the facility as we looked at it a minute ago. This is the shape. What WIN proposes to do is to repurpose the entire facility, clean it up, we'll talk about that in a second, and put this facility in that fashion on top of it. This is the outline footprint of the building itself. This wing is entirely a retail and restaurants. When you get down here, this is the main entrance right here. This is the hotel that sits on top of this so-called podium structure, which is 1 or 2 stories high, that contains the restaurants and the retail. This is the hotel. This is the casino area. This is the preferred entrance off of Rutherford Avenue, right down here. One would drive in and then either drive to the parking area here or drive to the main entrance here and come in. This is a dock that will be part of the facility in order to allow patrons to come and go by water. And we'll talk about more of that. We'll talk more about that in a second as well. So this is the water entrance. And then this is basically going to be a public space and connect up with a river walk that'll come along here, go off and up into that area as well. This is that MBTA maintenance facility that I mentioned a minute ago. That will remain, and this entrance will, if used, will take over and eliminate an entrance to that MBTA facility that's now right here, and I'll show you what the plans are for that new entrance. Next slide, please. This is a closer look at the end of the pier that we just, end of the land that we just looked at. This is the end here, the river is out here. Planned for here, and this is the end of the retail and restaurant area right here. The plan calls for a replanting here, stripping all the material that's there now out, replanting it with vegetation along this area. This is a public area for picnicking, walking, strolling, whatever. This is a pavilion that can be used by members of the public, members of the guests at the restaurant. This will all be open. This is the river walk that will come around, and this is the end of the site. But as you can see, the river walk continues. There's a dock plan for out here. The river walk goes down here and then across and out in that direction. This is the railway, but there'll be trees lining the area here to hide this facility from the railroad proper. In addition to the plantings, there is a plan for an oyster bed out here in which a large number, 750,000, I think was the number I heard, and is part of the presentation that was made to us. 750,000 oysters will be put out there, not for harvesting, the water's not yet right for that, but for water purification and trying to bring that part of the area back. Oysters apparently can process 23 gallons of water a day. So if you think about 750,000 oysters out there purifying, that's a lot of water. In any event, that's part of the proposal for down there. The next slide, we'll come back to the overall plan for the roof. This again is the retail and food and beverage area. There are skylights here so that this entire area is lit by natural outside light, as is this. This is a skylight as well. There are PVC panels on the roof. This is basically a flat roof in many areas. PVC panels at various points here where the roof is particularly flat. This is the hotel, and this is the central energy plant back here. So that's the overall look at the facility. We're now going to take a look, as we did a minute ago, at some of the renderings. This is the one that I'm using as the marquee for this area. This is the tower. The material here is something called Exterior Insulation and Finish System. EIFS is the acronym for that. That's a finish that many have suggested is not particularly durable and is not easy to maintain, particularly in a harsh New England climate. It is used commonly elsewhere, but there's a great deal of it throughout this facility. This is bronze glass, the so-called WIN glass that is used elsewhere. This is the retail facility that we just looked at from another perspective, the skylight here at the end, then the skylights that run down there, and the various skylights in the middle. This is reminiscent of a 18th century European city and the kinds of things that you would see in such an environment. It is also something that is used at the wind facility in Las Vegas, a concept that's used in the wind facility in Las Vegas. But you don't see much of this from the outside. From the interior, it's quite effective. The natural light coming into the facility and the effect that it has is quite effective. This again is the boat dock, and these are the public spaces. The next view shows the entrance. This is Rutherford Avenue out here. This is the entrance to the facility. We're now looking at the back of that tower we looked at just a minute ago. And this is the view you see when you come in. This is the self-parking area down in here, so you could come in, drive down there and park, or you could continue up here to where the entrance is and have the car valet parked, or drop somebody else and then come back and go in to the self-parking. The next slide shows us proceeding to the front of the building. We've come up now, we've gone past the self-parking. This is the main entrance and where valet parking is available. This is the boat dock over here. The boat dock over here, and then the retail arcade out in that direction. The next slide will show us another perspective of the boat dock area. This is the boat dock landing. This is the entrance that people would use after getting off the boats to get into the facility. This again is the retail area over here, and now you can see the prominence of these skylights as you come around, and the prominence of the skylights in various locations. And finally, this is the end of the esplanade. This originally was to be, I think, the area where the winter garden that we'll take a look at in a minute was to be planted. This area has now changed in the most recent plan, and now will be a nightclub. We'll take a look at that floor plan when we get to the next section of the analysis. But in any event, this is the end of the retail esplanade. These are the public spaces, and this is the Riverwalk that comes around and connects out there. You can see now, at least in the artist's conception, what the replantings are going to look like once that is completed. Now, I must say that the Wynn design has drawn some heavy criticism that's been published in the papers and discussed widely. The criticism was launched by a number of prominent architects using a language that I think was not helpful to a constructive discussion. Some of the terms and terminology that they used to describe this was the kind of shutdown language that is not helpful to a thoughtful and informed debate. But at the beginning of this process, I asked the consultants to help, and they did help, try to take some of the subjectivity out of design analysis. How can you approach qualitative design without being entirely subjective? I like this, I don't like it. You can't take that out entirely, but I did ask them to help. And they prepared, and we all discussed, a series of criteria that one could look at to try to come to some consensus about whether a design was acceptable, whether it was good, whether it was a design that was helpful. And we came up with these 9 criteria, and Appendix A to the report lists those criteria, discusses them in greater detail, and talks about why they are useful guides to analyzing design. They are consistent high quality in design, construction, and materials, reflecting and projecting the aspirations of the community, the region, and the Commonwealth, providing public space and amenities that benefit patrons in the community, serve and improve the immediate environment, be compatible with planning visions, strengthen connections with existing and future networks by integrating the site with adjoining streets, sidewalks, public transportation systems, and other public areas, capture and extend the essential qualities of the building type in its intended purpose in a captivating way. In some ways, this facility, and putting the rhetoric aside, does, in my view, fall short. The ephes material and the bronzed glass, the glass which is so spectacularly successful, as we'll see in Las Vegas, may not be the appropriate materials for this region. The reflection and projecting the aspirations of the community, the region, and the Commonwealth, it seems to me that that too is something in which this design falls short. It is also questionable, in my view, whether it fulfills that criteria. Insofar as projecting and reflecting the aspirations of the community, the next slide shows the origin of this facility, which was a proposal for Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the site down there was similar to the site that's here, but not exactly the same. But this is basically the same design here that was used in the Philadelphia environment. So it is a generic design, clearly, and does not reflect something unique to Massachusetts. But more important than that, it doesn't capture the energy that this company is capable of. This is one of the great innovative design companies. They've won hundreds of awards for design. And this is the Macau facility, which has a similar pattern. But first of all, has a much more integrated presentation. And although this is a bad picture on a gray day, a much more attractive and attracting facade on the rear. And the next slide shows the facility in Las Vegas, which is truly spectacular. This is the sunrise and the reflection captured on these buildings by the rising sun, the reflection of what's around them. It is unique there, it is attractive, and it is compelling. And simply put, it was the consensus of the group, and I share that consensus, that this proposal doesn't reflect that kind of energy. So let's move now to a summary. I'm not going to read this entire proposal. We have a summary like this at the end of each section, but I'm going to read simply highlights and then pause before we proceed to the next section. Mohegan Sun proposes to redevelop approximately 40 acres currently occupied by the Suffolk Downs Stables into an urban resort casino located in the MBTA Blue Line Beachmont station, not in, next to the Beachmont station. The proposal draws inspiration from the legacy and history of Revere Beach. The building and program design respond to a variety of adjacent site conditions, including the racetrack, commercial retail, a busy artery, two-story homes, and a neighborhood retail district. The curving contemporary structure is distinguished by a series of large concrete canopies suggestive of beach umbrellas, which existed along the circulation spine of the building. The facade, primarily inward-looking, provides glimpses of interior activity through the glass-enclosed pedestrian lobby. Sustainability features include a photovoltaic field and rooftop garden and greenhouses. Although the design is inward-looking and only one pedestrian entrance, incorporates a very limited public open space and presents a limited connection to Revere Beach, it offers a promise of distinction and a modern resort casino. Wynn proposes to redevelop approximately 26 developable acres of former industrial land along the Mystic River into a luxury resort casino that embraces its waterfront location. The proposed development is consistent with the City of Everett's vision for the Mystic River waterfront. It introduces public access and amenities to previously inaccessible, heavily contaminated site along the water's edge and provides connections to the Mystic River pedestrian network. Mohegan Sun presents a creative design that recognizes its place within its surroundings. Wynn presents a development plan with many positives, but the hotel tower does not have the innovative energy characteristic of its Las Vegas hotels and the best new construction in the Boston area. The next slide contains a list of bullet points that we created in the course of, I created in the course of the overall analysis. I'm not going to pause to look at those. And the final is a summation for this category of my view of the applicants in the creativity and design and overall concept excellence realm. Sufficient to very good for the Mohegan Sun Revere facility, and sufficient for the reasons that I've stated for the Wynn facility. So let me pause there and ask, first of all, the consultants if I have missed any critical element that I should bring to the attention. And then, colleagues, ask you if you have any questions.
I have a technical question. I think I need a recess.
That's not a question.
It's a statement.
But I'm not going to rule you out of order. So let's take a 5-minute recess. All right, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to resume and continue with this, if we might. All right, so far we've been looking at the exterior of this facility, both facilities, actually, and now in criterion 2, a gaming establishment of high caliber with quality amenities in partnership with local facilities. In that category, this category, we're going to go inside these facilities and take a closer look at their contents. Again, we've grouped the questions, and there are a number in this area. We've grouped them into 4 groups. The most important group is the gaming amenities, the non-gaming amenities, the entertainment venues, the public spaces, the description of the hotel, and the quality of the amenities. The exhibition spaces, the conference space, and the other facilities are in the second group. The third group, serving the surrounding community, really overlaps with mitigation, and I'm going to touch on that only lightly because it'll be dealt with in much more detail in the mitigation area. And the fourth, tourism diversity and diversified regional tourism, are elements of site design. Does it attract those? But that is a much more direct and central component of the economic development piece, and so I'm going to leave that primarily to Commissioner Stebbins. This is, again, a beginning with Mohegan Sun, and we look first at the contents, a description, a verbal description of the contents of each facility. The total, we start with gaming, because that's what these are. These are gaming facilities, so let's start with gaming. The total gaming positions, and a gaming position is defined in our regulation and in the statute as a place from which a person can play a game. So typically in slot machines, it's one gaming position for one slot machine. That's not always true, but that's the basic. One position for one machine. For table games, though, it's different. It's however many positions the table and the game will accommodate. There are 5,000 total positions contemplated for this facility. There are 4,200 slot machines contemplated, 120 table games, and a total gaming square footage of about 172,000 square feet. There also are non-gaming aspects of this facility and the other. Food and beverage will occupy about 92,000 square feet. Retail, 102,000 square feet. Entertainment and meeting areas are the same, 44,000, 45,000 square feet, and then a spa with about 12,000 square feet. The hotel, and there are 2 of them, as we know, in this facility, will contain a total number of keys. That's the term. Total number of keys somewhere between 425 and 550. That number hasn't been finally resolved yet. On-site parking will consist of 4,200 structured spaces. That's 4,200 spaces in the garage, and surface spaces add another 270. One has to understand that these are, again, somewhat plastic figures, but they've been through a couple of evolutions, and so we can count on these as essentially what the final proposals will contain. Let's turn then to begin to look at the proposals themselves. We start with the 2 hotels, and this is looking top down. This is the boutique hotel. It will be built, owned, and operated by a third party. New England Development is one component of that third party. Fenard Properties is another component of that property. And they will essentially build it, own it, operate it, and pay a fee to Mohegan Sun for those operations. They are successful real estate developers in the New England area. They have built retail concourses, retail establishments throughout the region. And the application says this about the boutique hotel. It's located off the retail concourse and provides a quieter setting for guests away from the action in the gaming area. The guest rooms in the boutique hotel are similar in size and amenity as in the hotel, as in the casino hotel, but the emphasis is on moderate pricing. So that is the boutique hotel, which will have a fewer number of rooms, 125 to 175, somewhere in that area. The casino hotel is down here. That will have between 300 and 375 rooms. It will, according to the application, provide patrons with direct access between the casino floor and hotel reception. Hotel amenities will include an indoor pool, spa, fitness center, and the like. The gaming hotel will also provide promotions associated with gaming activities, including extravagant suites and luxury rooms. It's estimated that 60 to 75% of this hotel will be reserved for gaming establishment promotions. So some portion of this will be available to general visitors. All of this will be available to general visitors. The next slide contains representative reference images. These are taken from the Connecticut facility. This is a hallway. This is a reception area, hotel reception area. These are pictures of various rooms in the facility, and they're submitted as representing, though not duplicating, the kinds of materials, the kinds of images, the kinds of appearance that the rooms in this facility will contain. On the next slide, we go down one level. We go down, we looked at really at the top of the roof and the top of the building and focused solely on the hotel structures. And now we're looking at the roof area over the casino. And the roof area is a working operation. It has protective capabilities. It keeps the rain off the casino floor, but it also is an area that's designed to be used by casino patrons. So we begin, and I should say that this plan, as we'll see in a minute, was an earlier plan, and like other components of the application, it has evolved slightly, and we'll see what the evolution looks like in a few minutes. In some areas, we have the photovoltaic renewable energy sources. We have, in this area, a food and beverage component. This is a pool area or for outdoor pools. This is an indoor roof spa on this plan. The roof is partly covered, but partly covered with green material. We'll see a rendering of that in a second. This is a 5,000 square foot greenhouse where food products, vegetables, and the like will be grown for consumption in the restaurants on the premises. This is a walkway across the top of the roof that connects the two hotels and connects down into the interior of the gaming floor. So this is one level above the gaming floor. This is the Beachmont entrance and the Moon Cafe. These are the tops of some of the parasols, but to show you this view, we've stripped the parasols off the top. The next slide is a rendering of the pool area. So this is that pool area that we looked at a minute ago. This is back to the casino. There's the casino hotel, I guess, back in that direction. That's downtown Boston. So this is an area that you can see from this rooftop. And this illustrates the kind of thinking about the green roof that's developed thus far. The green roof will be full of plantings and will be in bloom at least in the summer, the growing season. On the next slide, we go down one more level. And again, this is a plan that has evolved slightly since it was originally presented, but it demonstrates the main features and is the other plans differ only in the location of some of these features, but the elements are exactly the same. So we have a number of different components. We have 10 food and beverage components, and they're sprinkled around the site in various places where they are intermingled with retail and intermingled with the casino area. We have retail owned by third party. This is the retail area here. Not that. This is the retail area here. And it's owned by the same group, Fennard and New England Properties, that will own, operate, and fit out those retail areas. The tenants in the retail areas will also have a role in the fitting out process. There are 3 indoor gardens. There's an indoor garden here, an indoor garden here, some plantings here as well. There is a conference and meeting area over here. And this is a area known as the Mohegan Sun Kids Quest area. It's a place basically where casino patrons can have their children play. They'll be supervised and engaged in a number of different activities so that they don't get involved with the gaming floor. This is the gaming floor here. We'll take a closer look at that in a second. 2 food and beverage stations or bars here, a entertainment complex right here. Hotel reception, the entrance to the facility is here. Hotel reception is right here. And therefore, a guest who comes up through the main area or who comes up from the garage at elevators that are located somewhere in this area, I think. But a guest who comes in this direction in any event goes to hotel reception here and then can go to the hotels in that fashion without having to go through the gaming floor. That's also true of people who want to come to the facility and go to the shops and the restaurants. They can do that, but they don't necessarily have to go to the gaming floor. There is an interface between food and beverage and retail and the gaming floor here. You'll see that in a second. So this is not completely separated, but it at least is offset somewhat from the main entrance. Let's look at the next slide, if we can. So this is the casino floor. There's the bar. These are the array of games, both table and slots. Here's a high limit area. These are lavatory facilities, food and beverage there. And then the Wolf Den is a entertainment area that also is similar to the Wolf Den in the Uncasville facility. It's a high energy place to go and have fun. Retail is along here. A garden is there. The bus, this is one level down back here. The bus drop-off would be back on this side of the facility, a loading area back here. But that's one level down, and this is the casino floor. As I said, if we could go back for 1 second, in the initial proposal, there was a glass wall here, and there may still be, and a sort of an open area where people could congregate and look out onto the track. I'm not sure whether that remains, but that was at least part of the initial concept. Okay, now the next slide. Now this is the Beachmont entrance, so-called, and the Moon Casino. The T station is over here. We looked at the rendering of that before. T station is over here. Patrons would enter on the ground floor of this, come upstairs, and this is the layout they would encounter when they came up there. A variety of table games and slots up here, and then a passageway through retail onto the main gaming floor down here, or into retail restaurants and the like down in that area, with the 2 MBTA bus stops right there, and a rendering that we saw before of that aspect of the facility. The next area, the next slide, please, shows us, and this is a superseding plan. This was developed in response to our request for clarifications and presented to us fairly recently, that makes slight changes to this rooftop area. In particular, in here, this area has changed. Now the parasols are back, so they obscure some of what's beneath. But the 3 pools has been replaced by a single pool, and there are other changes in here, but they're slight. They're not significant. What is significant about this is a clear demonstration of the landscaping. This is basically a landscaping plan. And this is a more fully developed landscaping plan than we had seen before. So this area is fully landscaped with trees and plantings of one kind. This is the entrance along Furlong Drive to the circle that allows you to come around and go up to the porte cochere and the main entrance. You'll see in a second that there also is an entrance beneath this. This is basically a rising platform that takes you from street level up one level to the entrance. So you go around here and drive straight into a garage, but you can also, taxis and valet parking can park underneath this area. And there's a roadway back here so that people who come down Tomasello off of Winthrop can drive underneath here and around to the self-parking area. These plantings are the kinds of plantings that the developer now envisions will be there. I've put this little line in this slide because I'm going to do a cross-section in the next slide of this platform. And I put that line in there so you can see where the cut in the next slide is made. So let's turn to the next slide if we can. And you see, this is that circle area out in front. And the area that we were just looking at, full of all those plantings, rises up in this direction until it gets to the main entrance up here. So that's an elevated platform with the plantings on top of it. This is an area for parking of taxis and for valet parking. This is the roadway that I talked about, where you can come from that side through to this side and into the parking garage over here. And perhaps most notably, this is Sales Creek. This is the creek that runs through the north end of the track, and will go underneath this rising platform and will be refurbished and rehabilitated through the plantings and other kinds of things that are seen depicted there on the banks. The creek sides now are, I think it's fair to say, a mess. It's been long neglected, and the proposal will clean it up, allow a cleaner and smoother water flow through the area, and improve it substantially. Next slide, please. This slide depicts vehicle circulation. I'm not going to go into all the detail that's here. This is a way that you get into the parking garage. This is Winthrop Tomasello, and underneath that platform around to the parking garage, or down here around and up to the porte cochere and the entrance here. This is the garage inside. This is what you find when you get in here. There's areas for bus parking. There's areas for other kinds of parking that are in here. And this is one of 3 levels. There are 3 levels to this garage, and this is one of the 3. The others have parking spaces. So we don't need to spend a lot of time talking about parking spaces. There are 4,200, as I said, 4,200 total spaces in this garage, another 270 presumably in here, and then there will be about a large number of off-site parking spaces for employees. That's typical, and that will happen here, but the plans for where those off-site parking spaces will be have not been finalized because Mohegan Sun wants to wait to see where the labor pool is centralized before deciding where to make the off-site spaces, and then running shuttles between the facility and those spaces. The next slide shows a rendering. This is the interior of the facility. This is the retail area over here. This is the gaming floor over here, so there is an easy interface between the gaming floor and the retail area. These are the parasol stems that go through to the roof, and above this is some of the usable roof area that we just looked at, and so the parasols continue up and spread out up there. The next slide will show us, again, these are reference images, dining areas. This is a dining area with a dining area here. This is a dining area, burger dining, and another kind of dining there. This is, on the next slide, the conference spaces. This is the dining area and the conference space for conventions or receptions of, and this is a multi-use space, so it could be wedding receptions, it could be other kinds of occasions, but this would be the dining area. This is a boardroom or a meeting room. This is a presentation room. Those are all reference images. Again, not plans, but things that describe the quality and the content of what Mohegan Sun envisions. And finally, there is a slide about the public spaces and the public areas that one can see as one walks around. This is a confection in the middle of a large walking area. It's a little bit hard to see these, but these are various public areas that are accessible to patrons of the facility. In the final slide, we took a look at the overall construction budget, $527 million. I've seen a figure of $570 million. I'm going to defer to Commissioner Zuniga, who will talk to us in more precise terms of what it is. But that $527 million is the figure that I've used. And we've done a construction cost per hotel room of about $220,000. We did that because that is a rough estimate, very rough estimate, of relative quality. And so we use that as a stand-in for relative quality. So that ends the interior presentation of the Mohegan Sun facility. Now let's do the same thing with the wind facility. And here's the gateway to the wind facility, which will have about 4,250 total gaming positions. Slots will be 3,242, table games 168, total gaming space 192,000 square feet. Food and beverage will occupy 64,000 square feet, retail 77,000 square feet. Entertainment in the form of a nightclub will be about 30,000 square feet. Convention and meeting space about 32. Spa and fitness about 13. The hotel will have 504 keys and a total space of some 540,000 square feet. There'll be 3,700 parking spaces, and overall there'll be 1,369,000 square feet net of parking. I forgot to give the equivalent figure for Mohegan Sun. It's about the same, 965,000 square feet. So that is an overall outline of the content of the facility. So we looked at that before, and I put it here just for reference. Remember, this is the shopping area. This is now the nightclub area. We'll see that in a second. Shopping area, casino, hotel, and the like. I just want to take the top off of this so we can look and see what's inside, which we'll begin to do with this slide here. So this is the nightclub. It's to be modeled after a nightclub called Ecstasy, which is at one of the Wynn facilities in Las Vegas. There are retail outlets along here. There are restaurants, 10 restaurants, which are along here and interspersed throughout this part of the facility. There are 10 in total, 6 owned by Wynn, owned and operated by Wynn, 4 owned and operated by third parties. These little red areas are, it's a little bit hard to see them here, but the kitchens are located in proximity, of course, to the restaurants. The casino is here, and we'll take a closer look at a representation of this. This has evolved from the initial plan by the addition of this section. So when we look at this casino more closely, we won't see this section, but it was added later. There are 4 entrances to the facility, one here, one here, one here, and one through the garage area. Registration, one comes in the main entrance here. Registration is right here and right here, and the hotel elevators are right in this vicinity as well. So again, one doesn't have to go through the gaming floor to get to those those hotel rooms. And the retail area is all out here and here, isolated from the floor itself. The next slide, which don't, just go back for 1 second. To understand the next slide, understand that I'm going to tip in the next slide this gaming floor in that direction, and it won't have this section on it because it's an earlier description. So we tip this over, if you would now, Melissa, and we look at it here. So the hotel entrance, instead of being here, is down here now. The elevators are over there. Hotel lobby is here. So this is the layout conceptually with an additional space back here of the gaming area. Poker area, a sports bar will be in there, a service bar to serve the floor, a restaurant here, and a fast deli down here, high-limit gaming down here, baccarat, which is an attractive game, particularly to foreign players here, some lottery terminals here, and a food and beverage area back there. Next slide, please. We move up one level in this slide to look at two things. One, the spa. This is the spa area. Elevators here to get one from the gaming floor or the hotel or other areas to the spa. And then the convention and meeting space is this area here. So that's one level up from the gaming floor. And this is a part of green roof, portions of which are sprinkled around other components of the roof. Next slide, please. This now is the hotel itself, looking, of course, from the top down. These are the rooms on one side, slightly larger rooms on this side, but all arrayed around a common core. That's really all I wanted us to look at there. The next slide shows the parking area. This is the valet entrance is over here. The entrance and exit to valet parking is over here. This is the level 1 parking area. This will be 4 levels of parking. The first will be 1 level down from the surface, but the excavation will go down 4 more levels. So there'll be 4 levels to this parking area, deep, therefore going deep into the site to create the parking. There will be, as I said, 3,700 parking spaces there. Off-site, there will be 800 parking spaces for employees, one of which will be in Malden near the T-stop, another at Wellington Center near the T-stop, and then a third in Everett at a place in proximity to the facility down in this area, but the exact location has yet to be determined. We turn now from the diagrams to photographs, and these are, except for 1 or 2 occasions, photographs of existing facilities in Las Vegas. And the representation is that the quality, though not the actuality of what we see here, will be replicated in this facility. So this is a steakhouse at the Wynn Las Vegas. The next one is a deli, not fast food, but a quicker, less scrumptious dining experience in here. The next slide is a lounge area in the Wynn Las Vegas. There is this is simply what it says it is, a lounge area. This is the upper level. There's an equally fitted out component of this down below. The next slide shows the spa area at the Encore. This is a main walkway down here, and then the massage rooms are off to the side as one follows these little pathways here. That's what that looks like in Las Vegas. This next slide is the excess. I said ecstasy before, but maybe it's ecstasy as well. The Excess nightclub in Las Vegas, which the plan is to replicate something like this at the end of the building where I showed you a minute ago. This slide now is a rendering. This is not a photograph. This is a rendering of the standard room that the applicant proposes to have here. And the next slide will show the deluxe room that it proposes to have here. These rooms are fitted out in some detail before they're installed, and we visited the fitting out facility when we all had that trip to Las Vegas, in which all of the amenities and all of the floor coverings and everything is created and tested before it's installed locally. The next slide shows the winter garden, which is a component of this proposal. This is a opulent, I think it's fair to say, floral display that will contain seasonally appropriate flowers in a greenhouse environment. And we saw some of that at the Las Vegas facility as well. And finally, public art plays an important role in the Wynn plan. This is Jeff Koons, who's particularly hot at the moment, tulips, which is in fact on display in one of the facilities in Las Vegas. Art of that quality, it's represented, will proliferate here. The next slide is the final slide in this area. The per hotel room construction cost we have determined is about $635,000. The overall construction budget is a little over $1 billion. So that is the outline of that facility. That led me to the following conclusions. Mohegan Sun provides amenities complementary to and consistent with a resort casino intended to appeal to a cross-section of the marketplace. Wynn emphasizes in their approach a luxury market, including upscale retail tenants, nightclub, and five-star hotel suites. Wynn takes the lead on this criterion for its repurposing of a difficult, toxic site, advancing regional waterfront goals, and by separating its gaming floor from non-gaming amenities. Further, Wynn estimates total cost of construction at about $1 billion, Mohegan Sun at $570 million. The next slide, again, a series of bullet points in which various aspects of the development are outlined, and the rating is on the next slide, and I've rated Mohegan Sun sufficient to very good in its proposal, and Wynn very good on its side of the ledger. So I'll stop there and ask if I've missed anything of consequence of the consultant. Seeing none, open for questions from my colleagues.
Commissioner, I had one question. The difference in per hotel room
Right.
cost is really significant. Is there any explanation to go with that, or is it just the stars, the level of star of the hotel?
Well, we've done this as a rough estimate of quality. It is a rough estimate, and we've simply derived that number by looking at the hotel construction cost numbers that we obtained and dividing it by the number of hotel rooms, and that's what you come up with. It is a rough measure of quality used in the industry, used by architects and used by others as that rough measure. In and of itself, it's not determinative, but it does give you some idea of the quality. It is clear that the emphasis in the Wynn area is in a very upscale place, and in the Mohegan Sun proposal, a mixed approach to things. That's clear in both proposals, and it perhaps is reflected in those numbers. Doesn't say one's necessarily better than the other, but it does reflect itself in those numbers.
I will add, as you mentioned, Commissioner, I will be talking a little bit about that this afternoon. In my case, I took out the number of gaming equipment that's correlated with the costs that are embedded here, but there's more details to follow this afternoon.
Right. So this is a developing area. And
Thank you.
other questions? Okay, let's go on to compatibility with surroundings. Now, again, I've grouped these questions by order of importance. Transportation adequacy, mitigation, and improvements really is the first category. And here there's a large overlap between my approach and between this component of the application and the mitigation. So I'm going to sort of set the stage for a more detailed discussion that Commissioner Cameron will engage in. And then I think we both have thoughts. She'll do the main presenting, but I want to add some thoughts when we get to that section. Neighborliness and impacts on surroundings is a second category. It's important. We've made some findings and discussions on that in the report. But I want to spend most of the time in this section on the traffic because given the location of these facilities in this, what I've already described as dense urban environment, this is really an important discussion. Appendix C to my report contains a detailed discussion excuse me, of the traffic impacts surrounding and about these two proposals. So let's start with, again, with Mohegan Sun and go to the next slide. We've seen this before. The main arteries and access points are, first of all, Route 1 to the north, where there is, Mohegan Sun anticipates about 18% of its traffic in and out will come. From the west, Route 16 comes down and across there. They estimate about 7% of the incoming and 18% of the outgoing traffic will go along that corridor. Route 1A goes off to the south. I explained before that Route 1A comes down here, branches off into the Ted Williams Tunnel on Route 90 and continues over to the Sumner Tunnel in town. 69% of the traffic inbound, they estimate, will use Route 1A. 25% through the Callahan Tunnel and 44% through the Ted Williams Tunnel. 58% of the outbound traffic with a similar split on the outbound side. The next slide. This describes the various components of the area and the intersections that were studied in order to come up with a traffic mitigation plan. Commissioner Cameron will talk more about that, as I say. But these 28 intersections in Revere, Boston, and Chelsea were part of the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act study. They were done in a standardized fashion, like all studies of this kind, like the wind studies were done. They led to some major improvements along Route 1A, in this area particularly, that have the potential to solve some long-standing problems in that area. Next slide, please. This area shows the principal points of entry. We've been over this a couple of times, so I won't spend much time on it. This is Route 16, down here to Route 145, to Winthrop Avenue and Tomasello Drive, in and out. Furlong, in and out, off of Route 1A, and Tomasello, off of Route 1A, in and out, although this will be discouraged. It is a public road, so it can't be just blocked off, but access through this way will be discouraged. Next slide, please. This is Boardman Street. You'll hear more about that from Commissioner Cameron. This is where some significant improvements in the traffic flow have been created. This is one of the primary entrances to and exits from Winthrop, come along this area here. And so the proponent has made some proposes some significant improvements to that area. The next slide helps us look at the flow of pedestrian, bicycle, and public transportation. We have on this side, we have for bicycles, we have a pathway that comes in. We have bike storage areas right here. A future hubway station for bicycles will be here. The pedestrian access and egress is limited, but it's outlined and detailed here. Public transportation involves, we've talked about this, the blue line here and the entrance to the facility here, and then the bus stops are right here. The next slide, please. This shows us the principal public transportation areas in the vicinity. The bus route 119 comes right along here. 119 starts at the Northgate Shopping Center in the north end of Revere, comes down here and through this loop and around and then back to the Northgate. Several stops are in the vicinity of the casino, but these are the principal ones right along here. There are, the blue line runs between Bowdoin and Wonderland. Wonderland is at the north end of Revere up here, and Bowdoin is in the center of Boston in the vicinity of Cambridge Street and Summer Street, Cambridge Street near the City Hall Plaza. So it comes from, this comes from downtown Boston to here, and then from the north, from Wonderland down there. At Wonderland, there are 1,862 parking spaces, so there's ample opportunity for people from the north to park up there and take the T down. Of course, the inner city has the potential to drain a lot of area down there and have people arrive by the blue line, which is part of the plan. The next slide shows the overall mode share, how the developer anticipates people will get to and from the facility, about 73% by automobile, about 11% by taxi and drop-off, and about 11%, these are patrons, of people will come by public transit. Different numbers for employees. They have a plan for a shuttle system between various areas for the employees. And finally, in this area, the next slide shows the overall numbers, the overall local traffic mitigation plans that they have. And Commissioner Cameron will talk about this. I'm not going to spend time on it, except to note that the overall spending for traffic mitigation is about $46 million in the area where they have planned it. Let's do the same kind of analysis now for the Wynn Everett facility. That's our marker, but I'm going to start with the cleanup of the site, both because that's an important and a significant aspect of their plans. This is the site. It's contaminated. The contamination is pretty widespread, but the principal areas of contamination are three. One down here, which is very acidic. This is areas of hotspots for chemicals. Some of this will be stabilized on site. It doesn't have to be removed. It can be dealt with on site. The hotspots have to be removed and taken away. And this whole area will be excavated to the down 4 levels for the garage. And so that dirt and fill excavated from there will be taken out. The result will look something like what's on the next slide. Here is now the footprint of the facility on top of that garage. Here is areas that have been stabilized. Here's areas that have been covered with concrete. The banks will have been, the bad dirt will have been taken out and replaced by the grasses and other things that we saw in those renderings. The entrance will come in and the driveway will be here, and in that fashion the site will be stabilized and usable and by patrons and picnickers and others. The next slide is not one I want to spend any time on, except to show this in a broad scale. There's been some conversation and concern, legitimate conversation and concern, about the cleanup process. And it's important to understand that the cleanup process is basically an extended multi-year process. It's been going on for some period of time. It involves an initial investigation, a comprehensive investigation in this area, and the details are there, a selection of remediation approaches, an implementation of the remediation approaches, and then the final plans. And their process is about at this level. The final detailed plans have yet to come, but the methodology's been selected, the approach has been selected. I've just described it to you, and what is yet to come are the final details. There's been some discussion of that, but the discussion needs to understand that all of this work has been done before we get to this level. One also has to understand that all of this is to be done under the supervision of a licensed site professional. That's an individual who has training in how to do this, who's there, who's responsible, who's licensed by the state, and who is capable of doing it. It's under the oversight of the Department of Environmental Protection, and the Environmental Affairs Secretary, as part of the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act process, has found the proposal and the progress acceptable in the certificate that she entered. So that piece deals with the site cleanup, which is substantial, significant, and will be an enormous improvement to what now is basically a dead piece of property in the south end of Everett. Let's turn now to traffic, if we might. The next slide shows principal roadways in the vicinity. The environmental impact report study began with a study of some 58 intersections in the vicinity. This here is the site. These are the principal arteries. This is Route 99. Route 93 is over here. So some 57 intersections were initially reviewed. In the second level of the site, the final environmental impact report, the developer focused on 27 of those 97, as it was authorized to do by the response to the draft environmental impact report. The traffic comes from a variety of places, and it comes all over this area and beyond. But in the end, in order to get to this site, it has to go through one of two locations: Sullivan Square down here, or Sweetster Circle up here, and a significant portion through Santilli Circle over here. So these are really those two. I'm going to change pointers here. These two areas, Sullivan Square down here, Sweetster Circle up here, and then to a lesser extent, Santilli Circle over here, are key intersections for getting to and from this facility. Let's take a look at the next slide, if we might. So here's a close-up that shows, helps us better understand those two intersections. Sullivan Square is down here. Sweetster Circle is up here. By Wynn's estimate, the inbound traffic from Sullivan Square will be about 63% of its inbound automobile traffic. The other end will be about 37%. The outbound traffic will be about 73%, and the outbound traffic up here will be about 27%. That is a significant impact on both of those intersections. A significant portion of the traffic that comes out here at Sullivan Square goes down Rutherford Avenue into and through the Charlestown area, and then down into Boston. Some will come down and go onto Route 93 and go north, but a significant portion will go in the other direction. There are in the immediate vicinity 4 T-stops on the Orange Line. One is here at the Sullivan Square. There's a T-stop there. I'm going to come back and spend a minute on that. Assembly Square has a brand-new T-stop, just opened. Wellington Circle has a T-stop here for the Orange Line. And then Malden Square has a T-stop up here. So there is good T coverage there. Let's go on to the next slide, if we might. Well, let's go back to that slide for a second. I'm going to spend a little bit more time. This is the Wellington Station. WIN is going to run shuttles from Wellington Station down to its facility here, and it's also going to run shuttles from Malden Station down to the facility, principally for employees, but also for patrons. It is not planning to run shuttles from the Sullivan Station because there are bus routes that will come by the entrance here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. All right. This is, again, the site, the entrance to the site. The preferred entrance to the site is right here. This is the MBTA maintenance facility. This is all part of the Lower Broadway redevelopment plan that Everett has put together. And the plan is for the casino to be here. This will remain a mixed-use, single-family, multifamily, commercial, light commercial area right here. The MBTA facility under this plan would remain there. Residential would be up in this area, and as I mentioned before, residential has already, residential building, multifamily, has already begun. This is the power plant, that is the windmill, and these are some commercial areas over here. The next slide shows the preferred entrance to the facility. This is Route 99, which is Alfred Street and Broadway. These are traffic improvements that WIN will make here to allow patrons to enter and go into either the self-parking area here or to go around to the valet or drop-off area here. Deliveries would come in through this way. The back area, we'll get to that in more detail in a second, is to bring principally employees in, and this is an employee drop-off area, although some supplies and other things may come in through that back area as well. Next slide, please. This is the other part of that area, and would show how the service entrance would be set up. The service entrance would be down on this area under the preferred WIN plan. WIN would acquire a piece of property right here from the MBTA, another piece of property right here from the MBTA along the right-of-way, and a third piece of property right here from the MBTA. The MBTA, which now enters and exits this repair facility from right here, would instead change its entrance and exit to this area, and the service entrance would be around the back side of this. This is now under an agreement with the MBTA, but the agreement has to take account of the public bidding process. So that process has started recently, and that is what it's designed ultimately to produce. The piece back here is about 20,000, 30,000 square feet. Small piece here, small piece here. And those will be put together to do that. The next slide shows what will be the entrance and exit if that process and project that I just described is not finalized. And that would keep the MBTA entrance and exit where it is, have a squared-off entrance and exit here for Wynn patrons. They would share this area with the MBTA. There'd be 2 peak times during the day where the MBTA personnel would be going in and out, but they would share this, and then the patrons would come in, and once in, would go as before to the various locations inside the facility. Obviously, this is much less desirable than the one I just described, and that's why the other one is the primary plan. Next slide, please. This slide describes the pedestrian and bicycle facilities. There are bicycling facilities and pedestrian facilities here. Pedestrians locally, pedestrians from this direction are not likely to be many. Pedestrians from this area are likely to be, and here are the areas where they can come in and move around. Bicycle areas are provided as well. And then once both pedestrians and bicycles get onto the property, they can use this area and then connect with the other areas off-site and off-premises. The next slide shows again in schematic form what we looked at before with the 3 T stations. The Wellington Station, the new Assembly Square Station, and the Sullivan Square Station, with the Malden Station up here. But it also shows how richly enabled this area is in terms of public transportation. There are a number of bus routes here. One, the 86, goes to Cleveland Circle in Brookline, comes all the way across from Brookline to Sullivan Station. The 90 comes from Davis Square in Somerville. 91 comes from Central Square. 92 and 93 come from downtown Boston. And CT2, this one comes all the way across town from Ruggles Station. So the opportunity to capitalize on this is significant. These stations come from a whole variety, these bus lines come from a whole variety of places to the north and stop at Wellington Station, where there will be a shuttle going to the facility. That's not necessarily an end in and of itself, but it creates some food for thought that I want to talk about a little bit more when we get deeper into our discussions. Finally, or penultimately, I guess, the next slide shows a feature of this that is unique. It is a water shuttle piece that will go directly to the facility and pick up passengers from 2 downtown locations, Long Wharf and the World Trade Center, both of which are high tourist areas, many hotels, and other facilities. The Wynn company proposes to build boats that will take passengers up into right into the dock that we looked at. There'll be boats with specific hulls that have no wake, allow them to do, they claim, 15 or 20-minute round trips, even though this is quite a distance to take people up by boat. The next slide shows their travel mode shares, 71% by private vehicle, taxis and private vehicles, 10% by public transportation, 6%, there it is, by water transportation, and then the rest in various other modes. The one critical problem that hasn't been resolved is here, and Commissioner Cameron's going to talk about it before, so I'll just set the stage. This is Sullivan Square. This is where a heavy volume of traffic is intended to enter and exit the facility out of the north end of the Charlestown neighborhood. This is the Sullivan Square T station right here. This is the entrance one entrance to Sullivan Square. There's another entrance to Sullivan Square here. Another one here that drains the Charlestown community. Route 38 goes to the north and comes back here, and you can see the numbers of intersections that are there. As I said, 63% of the traffic goes to the site through this area, and it is already overcrowded and subject to gridlock at various times of the day. WIN has proposed some measures which, for its improvement, which is shown in the next area. And those are these measures here. I'm not going to go into detail about them, but they deal with this side of Sullivan Square. There aren't any measures proposed at the present time for this area. And there aren't any measures proposed for that side of the area at the present time. And the MEPA process has, the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act process, has said that much more attention has to be given to this before a MEPA certificate that's necessary can be entered. To complicate matters, this is the current state of Sullivan Square, but the next slide is how the city and the residents, at least a significant component of the residents, want Sullivan Square to look. And there's been a 10 or 15, actually a 20-year planning project that's been going on that came up with some variant of this plan. This is the plan now that's on the table. The cost of all that is around $100 million. And that is a moving target against which current planning, that makes current planning more complicated. So that's a very, very complicated piece of this project, access and egress, not entirely, indeed not primarily perhaps, in the hands of the developer to control. But it's a project, it's a piece of the project that's essential to figure out in order for the project to work. Next slide, please. This slide, I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on either. It shows that the construction mitigation for roadways that, to which WIN is committed, and that is in a variety of places described there, $42 million, and they've committed to spend that. They've, in both cases, both Mohegan Sun and WIN, although they've named a figure, have committed in many cases to do whatever it costs to do the upgrades that are satisfactory. So it may be more, maybe a little bit less, but those are ballpark figures. Next slide, please. The most complex concern, and this is my overall judgment here, most complex concern in this criterion is traffic mitigation. Both applicants have addressed the issue, identifying numerous intersections and roadways for improvements to mitigate the impact of the project-generated traffic and, in some cases, improve the traffic flow. The major differentiation between them is the Mohegan Sun mitigation measures for major impacted roadways are complete and workable. The WIN measures for Sullivan Square remain incomplete. Mohegan Sun responded well to traffic mitigation and adequately addressed other issues in this criterion. The WIN project has a major weakness with respect to traffic mitigation solutions at Sullivan Square. It responded adequately to the other questions and contributes in a positive way to the surrounding with the proposed site cleanup and waterfront development. The next slide shows the subsidiary points that I considered in making the overall rating and judgment, and that overall rating and judgment is for Mohegan Sun Revere sufficient to very good, and for WIN insufficient to sufficient, and the insufficiency is principally Sullivan Square. And I say that and acknowledge at the same time that that is not something that is necessarily in WIN's hands unilaterally to control and to fix. And I want to talk more about that as a group when we get to the deliberation stage. But that is, in my view, the facts as they currently exist, and my evaluation is based on those facts. All right, from the consultants, anything that I need to, did I omit it? All right. Any thoughts? Commissioner Stebbins.
A quick question on each. I was intrigued. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts talks about trying to deter people from using Tomasello Drive. Were there specific strategies that they talked about to, again, encourage people to either use Furlong or, I guess, or Winthrop?
There was not a specific plan to do that.
And my one question regarding Wynn is the garage access. You have one main point of entry into their garage, and when that traffic is leaving, it's coming out and taking a left-hand turn. Is you're both getting more incoming traffic, bus traffic going by it, as well as the traffic that's going up to the front door. Was there any discussion or concern by our consultants about that traffic pattern or queuing up in the garage or
There is,
access
and
issues?
there is, and the solution is to have signalization out there at the intersection that's variable and can meet the demand at a given time. And also, if necessary, having traffic officers out there to direct traffic.
Thank you.
I think I'm right. Am I? All right, let's go on to the next. This criterion is sustainable development. And there are a number of categories of sustainable development. But this one at the top is the one I'm going to spend the most time on, because this really has a great deal to do with how well one performs on each of these. And so I really want to spend most time on this LEED certification process. So let's turn to the next slide and begin there. But let me, in explanation of this slide, say that LEED is an acronym that stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and is a rating system established by the United States Green Building Council. In the rating system, there are up to 110 possible points, and an applicant would need 60 points to get to the LEED Gold certification, which the statute talks about and requires plans to meet. There are a number of different levels. There's certifiable LEED, silver LEED, gold LEED, platinum LEED. Appendix D to our report goes into much greater detail than I'm going to in how all of this works. But the principal feature of this system is its flexibility. It's one that's designed to allow a building developer to take a look at what he or it plans to do, look at the various categories, think about the things that they can do to get the maximum number of points allowed in each category, and each of these categories has a maximum number of allowable points based on the overall value of that category in terms of its potential to create a truly green building. It allows the developer to say, I can get an X number of points here, I can get more points here, and put together a package that comes out at the level the developer wants to meet, be it silver, gold, or platinum. And here, of course, we're talking about gold. This is the sheet, the rating sheet, the aspirational sheet, the plan that each has submitted. Mohegan Sun Revere plans to get 66 points, which will put it in the gold category, and it plans to do it in this fashion. I'll talk about each of these in a second. Wynn plans to reach the gold category, 65 points, and it plans to do it in this fashion. The first is sustainable sites. That has to do with items like access to public transit, stormwater management, maintaining open spaces. Water efficiency, the next one, has to do with such things as reduction of water consumption, like limited irrigation and water-saving devices. Energy and atmosphere looks at overall energy performance, use of renewables or green energy, and commissioning to make sure the systems are working properly. Both of these applicants have agreed to a robust commissioning process And a commissioning process is a process of planning and then installing the equipment, and then going back and checking in a very rigorous fashion to make sure that the equipment is working in the way that it was designed to. And if not, figuring out where the deficiencies are and correcting them. They both have committed to that kind of a process. Mohegan Sun has a little bit of an edge in that they have committed to using a third-party agent, commissioning agent, to carry out those plans, to carry out that process. That's expensive, but they've committed to doing that. Materials and resources include reused and recycled materials, local materials. Indoor and environmental quality covers such things as using low volatile chemicals and adhesives and other kinds of things to make the indoor air quality better. Innovation and design is what it sounds like, innovative things that are unique, and regional credits are items that are of more importance in one area than another. So there may be things that, for example, in the Southwest or the far Northeast, far Northwest would be useful things that are not particularly useful here. The next slide shows basically what they have proposed to do. I said that Mohegan Sun, which is on this side, has 66 proposed points. Wynn has 65. They're both very close to each other. Wynn has said that there are 29 additional points it could possibly get. Mohegan Sun has said that there are 16 points that they could possibly get. The way they've approached these things is demonstrated on this chart. The principal differences have to do with stormwater and water efficiency, energy and atmosphere. You can see the differences here. These are the points to which they've committed. These are the points to which they aspire, and these are the maximum points allowed for each area. So you can see from that chart how they propose to get to this process. This is a rating for each of those lead categories. Both are either sufficient or very good in energy efficiency and overall building sustainability. And in the next slide, I will sum up my analysis by saying that Mohegan Sun's approach to energy and sustainability reflects its experience in Connecticut and the related tribal culture and values. The applicant's approach is enhanced by their specific commitment to pursue LEED Gold certification under the auspices of the U.S. Green Building Council. Additionally, the applicant has stated their commitment to comply with the Massachusetts Stretch Energy Code and meet 20% of their electrical requirements via renewable energy or certificates. That's 20% in perpetuity. It's 40% for the first 2 years. And I failed to note earlier that they had committed to certification as a gold building. And that requires an independent entity coming in and actually certifying that they've met the gold standard. And that's an expensive part of the process. Wynn's approach to energy and sustainability is notable for its emphasis on improved efficiency and operations. The applicant commits to achieving a project that would be certifiable, but not certified, under the U.S. Green Building Council guidelines at a level of gold or better. Additionally, the applicant has indicated its commitment to exceed the requirements of the Stretch Energy Code, which was very recently adopted in Everett, and to meet 10% of its electrical requirements via renewable energy or certificates. That certificates reference is a reference to the fact that you can do renewable energy either by installing renewable energy features like photovoltaic cells, or you can go into the market and buy electricity from some entity that has excess green energy to sell, green energy more than it can use. So there's a market for that, and you can buy those certificates. Finally, then, both applicants engender confidence with approaches to sustainability and energy use. Mohegan Sun distinguished itself with its commitment to pursue certification by the Green Building Council, the increased commitment to renewable energy sources, and their agreement to support biofuel. I forgot to mention that as I was proceeding forward. They have a contract with a electrical generation company in which they're going to take all of their biological waste, sell it to that company, which then will use it to generate electrical power. My overall rating here is, and there's some more bullet points, is that Mohegan Sun is very good in this category, and Wynn is sufficient to very good. They were very close, but there were those differences that I just outlined. Anything? Questions? Okay. Now, the next three, criteria 5, 6, and 7, I'm going to go through pretty quickly. It's not to diminish their importance, but they are not nearly as important, in my view, as the 4 we've just discussed. And the first of those is security, monitoring, surveillance, and emergency procedures. I think as we look at the next slide, one difference that separated the two is their approach to a centralized auditing system. Mohegan Sun has had experience with a centralized auditing system in one of their other facilities. Wynn has not, and is not committed to it, although it is said that it'll do whatever we want it to do. We haven't decided whether we want a centralized auditing system. So that's kind of a wash, but it is a distinguishing feature. They both have had extensive experience in surveillance. They both have had extensive experience in monitoring, and they both have had extensive experience in emergency procedures. They've run successful facilities. They run big facilities. They've done this. They can do it. And there is little to distinguish them in their ability to do it and their ability to do it well. So for those reasons, there are some bullet points in the next slide, but in the end, I think they're both sufficient. The next group is permitting. Appendix E to our report talks in some detail about the permits that are required. And let me just talk a little bit about the permitting and in the next slide, if I might. For Mohegan Sun, the most important permitting issues relate to traffic mitigation and enhancement and protection of Sales Creek. We've talked about Sales Creek. We've talked about their mitigation. Commissioner Cameron is going to talk about that some more. Permitting itself, this is Mohegan Sun still, could be completed by the end of February 2015, followed by a 30-month construction period with an opening in September 2017. 2 factors could delay the process. They include protracted traffic permitting and wetland permitting. Those are possible delays, but basically they're on track. For Wynn, the 4 most important permitting issues relate to traffic mitigation, compliance with the Everett Municipal Harbor Plan under Chapter 91 of the General Laws, dredging and marine works, and site cleanup. Permitting, despite its complexity in the Wynn case, is well along and could be completed by the end of July 2015, followed, in my view, by a 36-month construction period with an opening in July 2018. 2 factors could delay the permitting. They include protracted traffic permitting and public involvement in the planning for the site's hazardous waste cleanup, which is a feature of the statute governing site cleanup. Public participation has to be included. There has to be a formalized process for that participation. That's been done successfully by other developers in the area. No reason to think it can't be done successfully here, but it is a point that needs careful attention. The next slide has a permitting chart on it, and has these 4 components. The MEPA process, Mohegan Sun has not finished that Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act process, but they're well along. Their interim report, their supplemental draft environmental impact report has been approved by the Secretary. The next step is to prepare a final one. There's no reason to believe that they won't be able to do it. They have projected an opening in April 2017. I think after conferring with the consultants that it's going to take a little longer, and we predict in the third quarter of 2017. On the wind side, they have not finished the MEPA process. They've filed a final environmental impact report. They've been told that they need to supplement that final impact report. They will supplement it, and then the Secretary has to issue a certificate before they can proceed to the permitting phase. They have predicted an opening in 2017 at the rate things are and the pace things are going. I am thinking it's somewhere closer to mid-2018. However, that said, as will be shown in the next slide after this one, both of them are sufficient. The permitting process is well along. The permitting for both of them involves some complexities, and with the dredging and the waterfront, a number of federal agencies, but that's being well managed and is moving along. And so the permitting process is being handled as well as it could. In a criterion 7, which is the final one, which deals with other uses for the building and overall control of the site, both applicants are satisfactory. They both control the sites. They both have proposed reasonable alternative uses for the site. Hopefully that'll never be needed, but they have done that. Wynn needs a couple of pieces for its preferred alternative. I've described to you the plan it has for getting them. Those plans are underway. If they don't, they've got a backup plan, and we've seen that as well. So both of those I rate as sufficient. So that brings us to the end of each of the criteria. Let's talk for a second about the overview. My overall building and site design rating for Mohegan Sun is sufficient to very good, and my overall rating for Wynn is sufficient. And that's primarily based on the building piece that I talked about, but really, in the last analysis, on this problem with the traffic in Sullivan Square. And that's a driver for this rating. There's a narrative that goes with this. I am going to leave it to you and the others to read the narrative. I think that the content of that narrative is embedded in everything that I've said thus far, and I think that the rating talks about the ultimate conclusion, but the narrative is there to show the thinking that went into the process that got us to this stage. So I will stop now and ask for questions. I do have one set of recommendations, and perhaps I ought to make those recommendations now, and then I'll take whatever questions exist. Insofar as Mohegan Sun is concerned, do we have the slide for that? Insofar as Mohegan Sun is concerned, I'm recommending that a condition be that Mohegan Sun submit exterior material and finish selections and samples for review and approval by the Commission before they're installed. We've done this elsewhere. This proposal rests heavily on the appeal of this, on the look of these parasols and the exterior and the plantings. And I think we need some review, as we've done elsewhere, through our consultants, the Pink Company, and perhaps others, to ensure that the site, the material selection and the like is appropriate. So I would recommend that we impose this condition. In Wynn's case, I would recommend that we urge Wynn to reconsider the exterior design of the buildings and present a revised design to the commission. And in any event, that they be required to do the same kind of material selection procedure that I've suggested and recommend for Mohegan Sun. Among the consultants and myself in our dialogue, there were some who said that the commission ought to condition the license on a new and different design. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that for two reasons. One, I don't want to issue or have the commission issue, if we go in that direction, a license that's conditioned on something that may take ages to come to agreement on. But more important, I think, and a number of the consultants, some of the consultants at least, agree that the track record of this company in terms of the quality of its design is unparalleled in this industry. And it seems to me that the energy and the pride and the value it places on the quality of its design is in the end going to provide the Commonwealth, if we issue this a license to Wynn with a quality design. It's really important that that be there. This building, in addition to being a large building and the key and the gateway to the redevelopment in Everett, is the first close-up building of significance that every visitor to the city from the north will see. And it seems to me that the emphasis there ought to be on, and will be on, if we award the license to them, a design of quality that is consistent with that first vision of Boston from the north. So those are the two conditions that I recommend. I'll stop now, take any questions, unless there's anything else I should be saying. Take questions from the commissioners.
I had one question. It's
Yeah.
a quick one, and I kind of passed over it when you were going through Criterion too, but that Moon Casino looked like it was open glass, natural light coming into it, which is kind of a different architectural model than we've seen in most casinos. I just wanted to make sure that my understanding of those renderings were correct. At least
Yeah.
it looked that way.
It is, and there's a lot of light and glass in that design, a lot of light and glass in both designs, but that design is, the curtain wall is glass, and both on the upper level and the lower level, both in the renderings and in the material choice diagram.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Go ahead.
I just had a comment.
Can I just take us back a little bit to the sustainability?
To the what?
To the sustainability
Yeah.
criteria, the
Sure.
one that leads with LEED.
Yeah.
So one applicant proposes to be certified, LEED certified gold.
Right.
The other one, if I understand it correctly, certifiable.
Right.
And therein lies the difference, perhaps, in your rating, Commissioner?
That is part of the difference. That's right. Yeah.
Right. Was there any consideration relative to the WIN that does not have that certified commitment, doesn't have more potential points as part of what they could do?
Well, next slide, please, Melissa.
Right.
Giving
this, right.
consideration to this delta,
That's right.
frankly, I did not give a great deal of consideration to that difference because it's entirely aspirational. And these are fully supported by plans. We know what their thinking is. We've had a chance to evaluate their plans. The plans are realistic. The plans are concrete. The plans are thoughtful. These are plans that have some considerable thought given to them. They're not just picked off the wall, but the commitment to reaching those isn't there. And so I downplayed that difference while noting it. Now, Having said that, it often turns out that as the construction proceeds, the developer finds out that they can't get 66 points in the way they've planned. This is flexible enough, this whole process is flexible enough, that they could drop points in one category and figure out how to pick them up in another category and still stay at the 66, or at least still stay over the 60. So that flexibility is built into this, but this is not as concrete as this, and so I didn't give it as much weight.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on the LEED piece. The legislation talks about a project achieving LEED Gold or better.
Right.
And both of these projects just score slightly over the LEED Gold line. I was somewhat surprised because this is all new construction, but are there questions or issues that came up relative to that in talking to the consultants about the LEED efforts?
No, LEED Gold is hard. And I think that these scores are as good as, if not better than, the scores on any other application we've received thus far.
Yeah, I'll.
There were more challenging, perhaps, more challenging circumstances with MGM because they had multiple buildings that they had to deal with. But for the slots parlors, they were all right in this area, and MGM is right in this area as well. This is a difficult standard to meet, and they've met it, and hopefully they will be encouraged to do more. We'll do that as we proceed. But this is, I think that was my thinking anyway.
Well, there's also one, just along the lines of why it's hard to meet these. This is especially hard for casinos because they are 24/7 operation, and where the gold standard is well suited for many buildings that don't get used, 24 hours a day. I would characterize this as a great accomplishment by both applicants.
Yeah, and in addition to that, they have huge open spaces, which are a lot harder to deal with than confined spaces where you can regulate temperatures in a much more sustained way. But the plans that they have and have submitted and have been evaluated by the consultants call for state-of-the-art equipment. They call for extraordinarily sophisticated temperature management and energy management systems that begin to kick in before they really need to, in some senses, in order to be ready when they need to be there. They both are really very sophisticated systems, and this is a good result by both. Anything further?
Just to comment that very comprehensive, easy to follow, as always, well thought out presentation, and learned a lot. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think now we will, it's 12:20, take a recess for an hour,
1 hour.
and we'll resume then at 1:20.
Excellent.